Hey everyone, this is a review of Fatal Seduction, Season 1, Episode 7, The Truth Shall Break You. So the scene opens up, and Lucinda is having a nightmare, and it goes back to Episode 6 in the beginning, where Lucinda is trying to drown Jacob. So Jacob's father, Benjamin Jabba, grabs him from Lucinda, saying, like, what are you doing, Lucinda? What are you doing? So the scene shifts, and we are at the end of episode 6, where Jacob is lying on the floor and Vio is over him. And Vio hears his phone vibrating. So he's patting him down to see where the vibration is coming from. When he finds the phone, he sees that Nandi is calling Jacob. And then we see Nandi, and Nandi is like, answer the phone. But Jacob doesn't answer the phone. The line goes dead completely. So Vio is dragging Jacob to his car. And then we see his mother, Lucinda, get up and start panicking. So Lucinda's like, where's Jacob? Where's Jacob? I killed him. I killed him. Ah. And the nurse has to calm her down. And then we see Vio put Jacob in the trunk. Okay, so the scene shifts, and we're back to Nandi, and Nandi is in the graveyard visiting Brenda, and it's like all spooky and stuff in the background. And Nandi is talking to Brenda, and Nandi's crying, and she's like, did I fall in love with a guy who did this to you? And you see, like, the theory that Vio told Nandi that Jacob, choked her out, put her in the bathtub, and slit her wrist. And then Brenda's like, Nandi. And Nandi's like, what the hell? And then she goes, Nandi. And Nandi's looking around, but she's listening. And she goes, it's not as it seems. And Nandi's just looking like, what the hell? Okay, so the scene shifts to 10 years ago. And Leo is pushing a basket, and Vio is there, and he Leo unveils wired swans, and Vio is like, Leo, I just can't stop thinking about the Benjamin Jabba case. And Leo's like, oh hell. And then, there's not enough witnesses. Bozy Vasiti, nobody can place him at the scene. And Leo was like, man, look, it's my anniversary. Let's not do this. And Bayo was like, it's a lot going on with this case. You know, if he was just a little weird, and if a little weird was a crime, everybody would be in jail. So the scene shifts, and we are in Leo's office. So Amada comes in and was like, Justice Mahati, I thought you went home. And Leo was like, I came back. And Amada was like, is everything okay? And he was like, yes. And then she's like, okay, well, good night. I'll see you tomorrow. And then Leo was like, Amada, I know this is TMI. Please don't report me to HR. But how do you know when your wife is cheating on you? Nandi, she's been acting kind of strange and, you know, weird. Like she'll get strange texts in the middle of the night. She'll sneak out the house in the middle of the night. It's like we make love, but it's like she's trying to hide something, like she's guilty of something. And then Amado was like, it reminds me of Captain the Ombi, something like that. And he goes, I don't have time for your stupid metaphors. And she goes, well, sir, you won't get to the bottom of anything if you don't face it head on. So the scene shifts and we see Zenhel um, on the couch. And she is looking through Jake's auto body shop Instagram and just flipping through it and stuff. And then Nandi comes and she's like, hey, baby. And then Z's like, hey, mom. And Z goes, where you been? She goes, and Nandi goes, so I'm just visiting Auntie B. And then Hell was like, I miss her, even though she was the crazy Auntie B. It seems like she loved me. She loved his family. Well, except Dad. They hated each other. And then they started laughing. And then Zenhel was like, remember when Auntie Brenda came to my 14th birthday party in these 14-inch heels. And Nandi was like, at that racist restaurant. Then Hell was like, yeah. And she reminded people, and together they said, not the one. So the wind was howling so bad that it knocked over one of the swan statues that Nandi got for her 10th anniversary. And now the scene shifts, and Leo is reading the book, The Suit, that Amada recommended to him, and he's reading it in his head. So now the scene shifts, and they're in the bedroom. So Nandi is in the room, and she's on the phone with Viol. And she's telling Bio, hey, I can't keep phoning you like this. I'm tired of hiding from Leo. You need to call me back. And Leo's like, damn, Bio, my brother. And so there was a flashback from 20 years ago. I don't know if this was Bio or Leo. I'm just assuming it's Leo. And, you know, he's all up on Nandi. He goes, the thing with you and my brother were a fling. Don't think about it. You and I are very serious now. So the scene shifts, and Vio takes a cup of water and throws it on Jacob's face. And Jacob's like, oh, what? And Vio has those things that you jump a car with. I forgot what they're called. And he's like, and it goes, zoom, 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 and electricity's coming out of him. And he goes, why did you kill Brenda? And he puts it to his stomach. And Jacob's like, whoa, whoa. And he was like, tell me, why did you kill Brenda? So this motherfucker is so obsessed. Lord. Anywho, so Leo walks downstairs. Z and Nandi are eating dinner. And he throws the book, The Suit. And Nandi was like, what is, no. Z was like, is this, Dad, have you been in my room? And he's like, sweetheart, I have. And, Can Dombian is very dark. And then he was like, Z. tell your mother how much money I have spent on your education. And she was like, oh, really, Dad? And Leo goes, yeah. So she's like, well, these short stories, it's about a wife who cheated on her husband. And when he found out the truth, he tried to get her to commit suicide or whatever. And then he goes, how about that, honey? And Z goes, a betrayal does not mean that you need to end somebody's life. And Leo goes, so eloquent, my Z. Nandi, you know, the deep truth that is deep inside of us will come out. And Z is looking very uncomfortable, like, maybe you should stop reading these dark stories. And then Nandi's like, well, that's enough whiskey for you for tonight. And Leo just looks at her like, okay, so he just continues to stare at Nandi, and Nandi's like, I'm gonna go get some bread. Does anyone want anything? And then Z was like, what's going on? And then she puts on her headphones. And then so Nandi's cutting the bread. And Leo goes over there and was like, have you talked to Vayu? And Nandi didn't say nothing. She just kept cutting the bread. And he was like, I'm talking to you. Have you talked to Vayu? And then he could continue to cut the bread when Nandi walked away. And she goes, no, I haven't. Why? You know, he just didn't answer when I tried to call. And Nandi was like, oh. And then she goes, excuse me, let me get some of that. And then she takes the bread and leaves. And Leo just looks so defeated. So the scene shift, and Nandi is in the bed. And she looks over at Leo to see if Leo is asleep. So she gets up and she closes the door, and then Leo opens his eyes. So Nandi's walking downstairs and she sees Bio, and he, and Bio goes in his native language, is he sleeping? And Nandi goes, where is, where's Jacob? And Bio goes, going for a swim. And so Nandi and Bio, they walk towards the pool. And Bio ain't got no leg. He's walking all normal, okay? And they see Jacob just lying dead in the pool. And Nandi's like, ah. And then she's like shifting over. And then she wakes up and Leo has the gun. And he goes with the gun and points it at Nandi. And Nandi's like, oh my God. And then Leo was like, confess. And then she wakes up. Ah. Okay, so the scene shifts and it's 7 o'clock. So Leo wakes up and it's like, something feels off. So he looks and there's no Nandi. He's like, Nandi. And then Nandi is pulling up at Jacob's shop. She's banging on the door, Jacob. And then Leo runs downstairs and is like, Nande, Nande. And then Zinhel was like, why are you shouting? And Leo was like, I'm not shouting. And then he just keeps going, Nande, Nande. So he goes in the back and Zinhel is following him. And he goes, where's your mother? And then the scene shifts right back to Nandi. And Nandi's like, boom, 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 Jacob, Jacob, boom, 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 boom. And So the scene shifts back to Leo, and then Hella's like, Dad. And then she goes in her native language, Papa. And then she's like, oh my gosh. And then Leo's just walking. He power walking to the driveway. And then he's like, damn it, because her car's out there. And then she shifts back to Nandi. And she goes, boom, 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 Jacob. So there's no Jacob. There's just nobody. So she leaves. And then the scene shifts to Vio. And then Vio's driving on the highway, minding his black ass business. And then he gets to the forest and he's like, oh, oh, because he's carrying a body bag. And you know, Jacob's already big, baby. 6'1" and damn near 200 pounds, baby. And he's dragging the body bag. And then he puts it down flat. And you can see Jacob in there moving. He's moving in there, but slightly. So the scene shares, and Bayo is on the highway, and he's driving, and Leo is calling him, but he's not answering. So they're walking. So Leo and Zenhed, they're walking back in the house from the carport, and he's like, "Dad, what's happening? What's going on?" And then he's like, "Zenhed, you know, be quiet." And so he calls Nandi, and Nandi's phone is on the counter. And he's like, oh crap. So the scene shifts, and Nandi's rummaging through her purse, and no phone. And she's like, shh. And then the scene shifts back to Zenhel and Leo. And then Hale was like, Dad, I don't think that's why you no. She goes, Dad, why are you going through mom's phone? That's not right. She goes, Zenhed, just stop. And then she blocks the phone and goes, Dad, you need to stop this right now. He goes, Zenhed, I am not your friend. Do you understand me? And she goes, yes, and walks away. And then the scene shifts back to Nandi, and Nandi just drives off. So the scene shifts, and Leo, he's really searching for to grab onto some type of straws with Nandi. He's going through the woman's phone. He finds nothing. He's going through the drawers, the clothes, the underwear, the hanging clothes. He went through her purse, nothing. And then he grabs the suitcase and it has the rose in it. He's like, aha. And then he sees it and then he drops it and walks out. So the scene shifts and we're in the tavern. And when Nadia opens the door, this lady, she goes, Vayo, is that your Vayo? And then Nandy goes, no, it's not Vayo, it's me now. And then she goes, is Vayo here? And then the lady was like, no, Vayo's not here, but he needs to be here running this tavern. And the phone rings, and then Nandy stops. And then the lady goes, Leo. And then she goes, it's Vayo there. And the lady goes, no, Vio's not here. And then he goes, there's Nandy's there. And Nandy's like swooshing her hand across her neck, like, I ain't here. And then she was like, no, she ain't here either. And then Leo was like, please don't tell neither of them that I called. Okay, so the scene shifts to Leo, and he's having a flashback of the conversation that he had with Vio. And he was like, me and Nadia are gonna go away on vacation. We're gonna try for another baby. And Vio was like, in his native language, like, Nadia doesn't want another child. And then Leo was like, oh, you're an expert on my woman now. And then when he looks over the railing, he sees Nandi and Vio doing the do. And he's just looking like, what is this I'm seeing? And Vio is smiling and waving his hand like, hey, brother. And Nandy is just smiling as she's getting, you know, pounded. And Leo goes and gets his gun. So the scene shifts, and Vio is at the tavern. And he goes and sits down and grabs a drink. Okay, so he gets out his phone and he calls Nandi, and he goes, Nandi, don't say my name. It's Leah with you. And that's when Leah walks in the cavern and he says, yes, he is. And he turns around like, oh, what? You got Nandi's phone? And Leo sets it down and he goes, man, you got some nerve and sticking your dick where it does not belong. And Vio's like, what are you talking about? He gives that look. And, you know, Leo goes on talking about 10 years ago, you made me do something that I did not want to do. And Vio's looking like, what did I make you do? And Leo goes, I don't feel guilty anymore. And he pulls out a gun, and Vio's like, oh, you got a gun, right? Oh. So he points a gun at him, and he goes, why my wife, you effing pig? And Leo goes, what are you talking about? And Leo goes, you effing my wife. You're fucking my wife. And Vio goes, what are you talking about? Why Nandy? She's my wife, man. A one night stand with my wife. What? And then Vio goes, what we did 10 years ago? He just, fuck you, man. I'm gonna kill you. I'm gonna kill you. And then Vio goes, what did you do 10 years ago? And then there's a flashback and they're talking and they're talking about, oh, minister wasn't the driver, trust his drivers. And then Leo goes, let alone or rape her. And then Vio goes, minister is not a cop. And then Vio goes, what's more important to you, the truth or your job? And then Leo's just laughing. And he's just shaking with the gun and crying. And then Vio goes for the gun and then he punches Leo. And damn, they're just squabbing, y'all, fighting over a woman because Leo is paranoid. And then he's like, are you fucking my wife? And then tries to swing at him because I think Leo's left handed and he ducks and he hurts himself. And Vio's old ass with a limp throws him over his shoulder, just whooping his ass. And then he goes, fuck off, Vio. And then Vio goes, F you, Leonard. What? And then he put Leo in a chokehold. And he goes, what did you do 10 years ago? What did you do 10 years ago? But Leo's not saying a word, y'all. So the scene shifts and we're back in the woods. And Jacob is wrestling, trying to get the bag open. And when he does, he takes a deep breath. And then all of a sudden, we see Jacob bend over, running, hurt, the whole 9 yards. And then as he's running, he's falling. And then he's like, he's running towards the road. And then when he gets to the road, right, because Nandy's driving, minding her business. And all of a sudden, he finds the road and Nandy hits him straight on, boom. And she's like, oh my God. So the scene shifts back to Vio and Leo. And Vio has the gun and he has Leo by the collar. And he goes, tell me you knew Jabba was innocent. tell me you had nothing to do with me getting shot. And Leo's like, I can't. And he just busts him with a gun, boom, and knocks him out. So Jacob emerges from the bottom of the car, and when he looks up, she goes, Jacob. And then Jacob just bolts back into the woods, and she's just following him. Jacob, I've been looking all over for you. Vio. And he goes, Vio, the guy who's going to kill me because he thinks that I killed Brenda? What kind of man do you think I am? I just wanted to explain everything to you. Why can't you just let me explain? He goes, I want you to know who I am. But yes, Brenda lied, false witness. She perjures herself and my father killed himself. She goes, Brenda didn't lie. And Jacob's like, he did, Nandi. He lied about my father. I am not sorry that she's dead because she deserves it. And again, I didn't do it. Nandi, my entire life, all I wanted to be was a lawyer because lawyers know how to get justice. But then you remember and learn there was no fucking way to clear my father's name. And then you came to campus, the wife of Leonard Mahati. And then Nandi was like, you wanted revenge. And then he's like, my mother went crazy after my father killed himself. And then Nandi was like, you saw the wife of Lynn Mahati on campus. And then what? For fuck's sake, I stalked your family. I stalked your daughter. You stalked my child? Jacob, I was looking for a way in. And you know what I saw? I saw you. It was physical at first. Nandi, I mean, look at you. You're beautiful. Oh, Lord. I wanted to know one. So I read the thesis. And Nandi, your mind and sense of justice. I couldn't get how someone thinks and married someone like Justice Mahati. And then he was like, I stalked you. And she goes, of course that matters. You stalked me. And then he was like, I took fucking photos. I took fucking records. Lord. And he said, records of everyone. No one deserves you but me. And then she goes, no, but I don't fully know what until I came to life and I met you. And that is just looking horribly disgusted. And she goes, what does that mean? Because it fucking means I wanted to murder your husband. She goes, oh my God. And then she goes, Nandi, I fell in love with you. And then she goes, and that night when we met, people do whatever they do, they can, they find love. And then Nandi goes, you're insane. And then Jess goes, you're overreacting. And she said, get your hands off me. You love me. She said, get away from me, Jacob. Get away from my family and get away from my child, you fucking psychopath. And then she just starts walking off. And he's like, Nande, Nande, come back here. You fucking, I'm a maniac. Yeah, I'm a psychopath. Yeah, I'll show you a fucking psychopath. Yeah. Your husband's more important to me. Your daughter is more important to me. I'll show you who's more important to me. No one's more important than me. And then Nandi goes off. Okay, she speeds away because she thinks Jacob is crazy, and this man is fucking crazy, y'all. So that is the end of the episode. I will see you in the next one.